Okay, we're good to go. Excellent. Good afternoon. Good afternoon all here and online. Thank you for joining the Institute Update. So I can acknowledge the traditional owners of the many lands and us emerging. In that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are the present. I'd also like to acknowledge those of our staff today observing Ramadan. So today I'll provide a brief update on new strategic directions, as well as outlining what the upcoming federal election means for us. When I say upcoming, it does seem like it's genuinely upcoming. Andrew will then provide an update, amongst other things, what the federal budget means for us, and then Matt will provide an IT update. And hopefully then have time for some Q&A, and we'll do the Q&A at the end, so rather than in between. So I think there's capacity online for people to put questions in there, and obviously the hand up and we'll like to question. So first, I'd like to update you on the finalisation of our new strategic directions. So the last sort of strategic directions, I think, meant to wind up in 2021, but given that it started, and I think the board get to know me and understand, I thought we postponed it until 6. So the board meeting last month endorsed the new strategic directions. They build on our 35-year history, specifically our achievements over the previous 5 years, and set the foundation for the future AIHW. They articulate our vision, confirm our sharpened purpose and core values, highlight strategic goals, work. They're very similar to our debt, reflecting the board's high level of satisfaction with the Performance Action Institute. There are, however, some slight nuances mentioned. I'm guessing most people are aficionados of our goals. Interesting, when we had the discussion at the board, I was surprised, pleasantly surprised. The board was really quite engaged in the goals. So we have the goals, the high-level goals, and then there are objectives underneath. I actually got right into the discussion about making sure that we really spent time presenting just how well the Institute's doing and actually giving a marker for the future. So good. But anyway, our goals will be, and these will resonate, hopefully, a trusted leader in health and welfare data and analysis, innovative producers of data sets and analysis, strong strategic partner, and recognised for our organisational excellence. Now, under each of those, we're a long way towards delivering those, but with each, there's probably a little bit of extra work we can make sure they can. The rest of our directions are broadly the same, so I just might mention our purpose. Our vision remains stronger evidence, better decisions, and our purpose has been changed slightly, I think. We produce high-quality data sets and analysis to support improvements in health, and then our values remain the core APS values. So sometimes these things can be a little dry, a little bit, so what? But I think that the executive spent a fair bit of time trying to fine-tune these. The board certainly spent some time having its go at it, and so I think that's something that when we work through and it comes out and people have it, it's important within units, within groups, to have a good look at it and see what it really means. So we'll start applying to our corporate processes and planning, including our portfolio budget statements, corporate plans, priority actions, risk management frameworks, and annual. They'll also become the focus of all of our performance development agreements. So the executive, we're holding a bit of a kick-off meeting tomorrow, and I'm sure people are going to get more and more engaged in series of work out. Firstly, making sure we've got the right mechanism to put in place, and then just as importantly, measure our progress against them. So that'll be, certainly as the CEO, it's kind of an interesting part, because this is the stuff that brings all the stuff together. whilst individually people aren't only responsible for each elements. I'm suppose I'm the only lucky one who, when I front up the board, the key thing is, well, okay, how have you delivered against our goals? The next thing I want to mention is about the federal election. You're all aware that the federal election will be called soon. I don't know if Sportsbet has got particular odds on what day it's going to be called, but I think Kirsten reliably informs me that it's going to be Friday, so we'll hold it to that. Now, when the election's called, we'll go into the caretaker period, or the convention of being in the caretaker convention, and we remain in that until election day. Again, and these are conventions, and this convention is typically followed, but it is a convention. There's nothing sort of justiciable about it. By convention, the public servants enter the caretaker period once the Governor-General issues the writs of the House of Reps and for election to occur. And there's a little nuance about timing that I'll come to at the end there, but the caretaker period continues until the election result is clear, or if there's a change in government, until the new government is appointed. So one fine little quirk in our system is that, say for argument's sake, there's a change of government, but the incoming Prime Minister leaves a little while to swear the ministry in. The ministers in the previous government stay ministers. So even if they've lost their seat, so they've been voted out of the Parliament, until such time as the new minister is sworn in, they're still the minister. So we might face, probably not relevant for us, but it's kind of like an interesting quirk of history. We might have a situation where Minister Hunt is still our portfolio minister, even though he's no longer contesting the seat. So he's not contesting the seat, he's out of the Parliament, but he's still the minister until such time as a new minister is sworn in. Hopefully, it's sometimes a bit embarrassing if they don't have any more resources from the department, they don't have anything, they've got to make some decisions about something. But during the caretaker, the convention's clear that no major policy decisions can be made that combine incoming government, because there's no lower house to hold the executive to account. Now, interestingly, well, to me it's interesting, to a lot of people it's probably completely irrelevant, but the mechanism to hold the executive to account is question time. So that sort of farce that you see on the TV occasionally reported, that's, strictly speaking, the thing whereby the executive is accountable to the legislature, because it can't, the House is not sitting, it's not there, it can't do it. But within these limits, the routine business of government is able to continue. And of course, at the Institute, that's largely us. We're part of that routine business of government. So during caretaker, we'll continue to publish our reports, because that's business as usual. Now, I've already had a good look at the reports that are going to come out in a period that's likely to be the caretaker period. Taken care that there's no report comes out that could be construed by someone as being overly partisan, so that is overly favourable for the government, overly critical of the government. And it's not just because none of our reports would be overly critical of the government, but it's not so much what they are, it's how they can be perceived to be and reported to be. Because a place like us, what's really important is we sort of jealously guard our independence and the fact that we're not partisan, we're not drawn into that. So, you know, an easy thing to do is to say, well, okay, if we've got something coming out that's a bit controversial, someone could say, here's a statement the government's doing its job particularly well. Here's a statement to say that the government's failing in its job, just making sure we don't put anything out in that sensitive period. I'm told I need to stand closer to the mic, so I will. Sorry, so does that mean all the people online haven't heard? Oh, well, that's probably because I've got a very soft voice. No? I'll keep going. Sorry. So the other thing that in the caretaker period, what we'll do is where we do have our upcoming reports, make sure the various shadow ministers get a copy of it as well. So at the moment we have the process, we make sure relevant portfolio ministers get a embargoed copy of our report so they know what's coming out, and we'll just make sure in the caretaker that goes to shadows as well. Now, I don't think any issues will come up for us, but just one little thing to bear in mind is that the caretaker doesn't start until such time as the House is actually dissolved. And what certainly Prime Ministers in the past have done, they've gone to the Governor-General and said, I want to have an election, can you please dissolve the House? but can you do it in 3 days' time or 4 days' time? And that little period in between is one where a lot of requests can go into the public service and work needs to be done. So it might be finalising contracts, might be making sure grants get out the door. It could be all manner of things, might be last minute policy advice. So there is that little period of time where even though people think it's in caretaker, we're not actually in caretaker. It's still the normal public service operating. Now, I don't think that will have any effect on us, but it could be the case that some of our colleagues in the departments come to us in a rush and say, right, we need this or we need that or we need something. And you might be sitting there saying, oh, actually, how does that work? We're in caretaker, we can't do that. So it's then just worth realising there is that, it'd probably only be 2-3 day gap, but it is there. Now, the PM doesn't need to do that, and sometimes they'll get it dissolved straight away. So it's really a function of what that conversation between the PM and the Governor-General is. But if in any doubt at all, just ask. Go to your unit heads, unit to group heads, and Beck Richter and Kate Wood in the comms area doing the parliamentary work now. They will be the source of truth. So it's important that we've got to make sure we apply the conventions as they're meant to be applied. Don't actually do anything, but make sure behaviour can't be criticised. But if there is any uncertainty, please make sure you get that checked. So I'll now hand over to Andrew and then Matt to provide their updates and then come back for any questions. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Rob, and good afternoon, everyone. Working. Do the finance update now. Starting with the budget. So this year we had additional estimates in early February and the budget in late March, which is a bit different timing to normal. And we actually managed to get some extra money in each of those. So that was a good outcome. $1 to $2 million a year for child safety and child sexual abuse data. And in the budget, we've got $300,000 a year for IT and data security. Matt will talk about that a bit later. It wasn't as much as we wanted. I'll come to something in a moment where we did get a pretty good consolation prize. So thank you for everyone who worked on all that with those two events being so close together. There was a lot of work for Lou and her team on the child safety, putting those bids together, for Matt and his team on the IT and data security, and for the finance team. There was a lot to do in a short time, so well done everyone there. So the consolation prize was we did get substantial approval for losses. So over this year and the next couple of years, we can dip into our equity by $5.6 million, and we'll be using a lot of that to fund IT uplift. Some of that is also for rescheduling child safety work, because that money for child safety, $1 million of that's for this financial year, because it came so late in the year, and I understand there's some delays of the National Office for Child Safety. We've got permission to actually spend that money next year, even though we got it this year. And that's very unusual for any appropriation money. Normally you can't you use it or lose it in the year you get it. So we did manage to get that rephased and come through approval. And that'll all be funded out of our equity. Got quite substantial equity, going back particularly to the merger with the National Health Performance Authority, so we can comfortably cover those losses. The downside of it is that that money is not ongoing, so we have to be very careful that we use it for one-offs where we can, and then work out how we can fund any further ongoing costs need funding. Okay, so that translates into total revenue and from both appropriation and external fees. So our appropriation there is sort of hovering around the $35 million mark. It's just over a third of our total revenue. When you add in the external fees, is just under 100 million. Reckon that next year we might just crack the 100 million, which was a very strong goal of a former CEO. So be pleased we've almost got there. I should point out that little jump there in external fees last year. Some of that was for payments to third parties. So we've had particularly the National Disability data asset funding which we passed on to other parties, particularly the states and territories. So that does sort of inflate our total revenue a little bit. But there's still been substantial growth there. Okay, those who've been watching me at Institute Update for a few years will know I tend to use the same graphs all the time, and this is one I've used before and updated, so I got a bit bored of that and I thought, about time for a new infographic. So I'm very excited to reveal here, for the first time, a new figure, and which attempts to show our total revenue and how, and in a very broad sense, where that money goes to. The executive has had many discussions over recent weeks about money's used for and why how much corporate gets and who funds corporate and all that sort of thing. And doing it all in words is extremely hard. So this might make it just slightly less hard, I'm hoping. So I think of the corporate money as the sort of the jam in the middle of the donut there. And I sort of say that because it's a bit flexible. It can sort of move a bit from left to right. And that's part of the problem in trying to nail down discussion, and I'll explain that in a moment. So around the outside in the bold line you've got the total revenue, on the left you've got the appropriation, and on the right you've got the external fee-for-service funding. So the appropriation revenue for any year is pretty much fixed. Once we're told that's what we're getting, that's what we're getting. And what it's used for is to fund the balance of the corporate costs which are not funded externally, and we'll come to that in a moment. And what's left is there for the statistical units. On the right-hand side, that currently 62 million, but that money can go up and down each year, as you've seen in the earlier graph. Big chunk of that now goes to third-party suppliers, like the NDDA suppliers that I mentioned earlier, and the rest of it's divided between the statistical units and corporate. Now, the formula we have is a complicated formula, but it's approximately 60-40. 60% goes to statistical units, 40% to corporate. So the bigger, more external funding we've got, the bigger that gets, and that that sort of apricot jam bit in the middle there sort of expands to the right. And if the corporate costs don't grow in proportion to that, then the whole it shifts over to the right, and there's money for the stats units. However, if we're getting less money from external, either because the rate we're charging goes down, we're not fully recovering everything we should be recovering from external, then that means we just can't fund that money out of external, and the corporate costs at a point in time are the same. So it all shifts over to the left, and there's less for statistical units. So it's very important we get that pricing formula right, and very important that we implement it when we do get it right. Now, there's a little vertical line there, corporate specific. That's been an area of great debate because there is a BAU corporate, but there's also some corporate costs which are very specific to a particular project. Particularly see this on websites, and it can be the IT costs or it can be the web support costs. And we really do need to charge what's fair and right to charge to our external funders for that. And so working out where the BAU ends and where that project-specific cost starts, that's what we're spending a lot of time doing at the moment. So we've got an ExCo offsite next week. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this, but I hope that sort of model there helps sort of picture it and sort of frame the discussion, because I think you can sort of see the impact of different percentage rates. You can see the impact of how much we can cover specifically from a project or we don't. It's all one thing. So in the end, the jam donut there is not a magic pudding, to mix my metaphors. And with that, I'll hand over to Matt. Thank you.
Andrew? Not sure about a jam donut, but might have looked a bit more like a Twinkie or a biscuit there. I'm not quite sure. Afternoon, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Today, following Andrew's discussion, I just wanted to give a bit more of a breakdown as to how the budget impacted the ICT funding, and also give you a bit of a snapshot about what our priorities are for the rest of the calendar year. So, as most people know, the Institute has been working on a new policy proposal for a couple of years now. It's involved various iterations including my predecessor working on it, and Jeff Niedick from in the past as well, and it's been bouncing around for about 2 to 3 years. So this year, 3-stage NPP, and I'll just take you through quickly what that was made up of, because it's all very relevant for our future. The first module, you can see there, Module A, was titled Secure Enabling, but that was about our ICT infrastructure uplift. So this was about moving to a commercial data centre. For those that don't know, we've got part of our data centre located in this building here at the moment. So it's about moving to a commercial data centre and putting in place redundancy in case of a failure. Most of Module A related to standing up that primary and secondary data centre away from this office building here. Module A also incorporated some capability in the form of desktop and backup services to streamline ICT ops, but unfortunately these were sort of stripped out in one of the many iterations that we had to go back to Finance and the Department of Health with. Module B, the Delivery and Information Management. This covered a bit broader of an uplift, including some of our business line areas, with an allocation towards funding a records management and information management system and improvement to those sort of standards across the organisation. Secondly, it also included an ICT delivery management capability that focused on rectifying our core network, so improving bandwidth, improving capacity, improving corporate device management and asset management across the board, and the move to the cloud for quite a few internal business systems. So that would have been a good one to get as well. The last one, which is probably most relevant for everyone in the room and online, Module C, is about the core data and analytics environment. Actually, I should mention I missed ICT security there, including Essential 8. The Essential 8, for those that don't know, is an Australian Cybersecurity Centre guideline that we've all got to comply with, that focuses on application controls, patching, backups, application hardening, restricting admin rights, all sorts of things. So it's about core cybersecurity protection. And that's part of Module B. Module C, the data and analytics environments. This was about providing additional staffing resources for the data linkage areas, as well as providing an uplift to modernise our environments and introduce new functionality, more cloud-based. It was in line with the new future analytics model strategy that we've got going on at the moment. And for those that haven't seen the roadshow that we're doing, I encourage you to attend that and learn all about the future analytics model and how it will change the Institute in the next 5 years. The NPP was submitted for consideration. Unfortunately, all we got was Module A. As Andrew indicated before, I've rounded up, and I'll take the extra rounding as well. We got about $3 million for Module A, with a callback to go back at MyEFO for the rest of the balance of the modules for Module B and C. That's not too much of a disappointment for us because it does enable us to get the data centre moved, increased protection through new firewalls and increased capacity across the network as well from a bandwidth perspective. As pleasant as it will sound to a lot of people that use the environments, it does include hardware to improve the VDI performance and increase capacity across that as well. So there will be some core improvement to the services that we provide to the majority of the analysts in the environment. So we will go back at MyEFO and try again to secure the rest of the funding, and we'll also seek funding from alternate sources whenever the opportunity presents itself. What does that mean for the group and the priorities for the rest of the year? Well, this is by no means an extensive or exhaustive list of all the activities we've got going on at the moment, but some of the key ones which impact the majority of staff. Obviously, most people would be aware that we've rolled out the new M365 applications and introduced the new MAM service. That's just part of the M365 platform. It's a much larger implementation than just what you see in the desktop. And so we'll be completing our Exchange migrations and the platform enablement over the rest of the calendar year, and that'll introduce some new features across our cloud-based systems, management of our environment, device management, and further enhance our ability to support everyone. We will be introducing some multi-factor authentication, which you might have come across for accessing websites or your own personal devices in the past. We'll be extending that across all corporate devices so that you've got consistency in user experience when you log onto your laptop or your mobile phone or your iPad or whatever device you use. So MFA will also help us uplift our Essential 8 security to maturity level 1 eventually. Institute projects replacement, that's a key project we have going on at the moment. Here to a lot of executives' hearts and minds. We have engaged an external company to come in and assist delivery of this upgrade. They've been on site since earlier this week and are currently doing the detailed design and working with our internal teams to help shape what that will look like. The IP upgrade was based upon the analysis work done towards the end of, well, in January, February and the end of last year. And you may recall filling out a survey about what you'd like to see and what was needed and all the rest of that. So that is a key priority for delivery by June this year. So that's not a calendar year thing, that is a June problem. The primary and secondary data centre, as I said, the funding that we got as part of Module A and NPP will finalise that move and will help us remove Bruce, this building, as a hub for all network and data centre related issues. We're going to continue to revise the solution front door. As Andrew mentioned, there's been a fair bit of work going on around the costing template, and that was presented earlier this week. What we've been doing internal to ICT is obviously streamlining our processes for engagement to make sure there's consistency in solution design, consistency in pricing, and to make sure that we're not overcharging or double charging compared to where we're funded from BAU. So we'll continue to refine that and implement those changes throughout the year. FAM, the Future Analytics Model, as I said, if you haven't been to a roadshow for this, I'd encourage you to do so. We are going unit by unit or group by group at the moment. We have received feedback that the presentation is extremely technical. I do apologise in advance for that, but it is the first presentation that we're giving out, and we've engaged a change manager who's going to help us refine our technical language to make it a bit more consumable for the larger public. But the FAM does set up a change to the way the Institute will handle data and analytics into the future. We have established a proof of concept, which we're working through with a couple of vendors at the moment. It's not going to replace an existing environment. I just want to make that clear at the moment. That was a bit of a concern to a few people. It will operate in parallel whilst the proof of concept runs, but it is designed just to demonstrate that our architecture and technical solutions are going to be fit for purpose. Eventually, if FAM takes off, or if we get the funding through the NPP or other means, it will replace a lot of what we do within the Institute currently from a technical perspective, but not from an operational perspective. So how data linkage occurs today, or how analysis is done, or analytics is performed, or reports are generated, that won't change. It will just be the technical solution underpinning that will be modified and be brought up to more contemporary technology. And lastly, through our internal investment committee, we put up a proposal around RON and IA consolidation. That was granted, and we're in the process of ordering new equipment for that, which is another boost to performance and capacity across the board. It'll take about 6 months to complete, but what we will do is standardise the tool sets available with those environments so that there's not a separation between each one. The R, Python, SAS, etc. will be made available across all the environments, and the increased performance and capacity, along with the VDI upgrades that we're doing as part of the budget funding, should take us through to when FAM can be delivered in 3 to 5 years. So that's a big positive. Don't read too much into the word consolidation. Again, as I said, technically there might be a consolidation in the back end. It'll be moved down to one environment, but from a data security, authentication, role perspective, it won't change what you currently do today. And that's pretty much it for me at the moment.
Thanks, Matt, and thanks, Andrew. One little thing worth us noting: Andrew's reuse chart, but the one that shows the revenue about 100 million. If you track back 15, 20 years, that was a lot less. So, and some of you have been around for quite a while. Some of you are more recent joiners like me, but particularly people who've been around a long while where you would have experienced life here in a genuinely small agency. We've now grown to a medium-sized agency. And so then a whole bunch of things have to change with that. Specific things, but also, as Matt's gone through with the IT, have to accept that we're moving to a world where bespoke products generated internally for a few people is probably, I think is definitely not the way of the future. We have to leverage off what main players are doing in this area and then find a clever way to make sure that internal processes aren't disrupted that much. There will inevitably be some change, particularly as we work through the next few years. But that's just it's a consequence of success. And it's also a consequence of, you think about the analysis that we can do now compared with the analysis that people would have been doing 15 years ago. My guess is more sophisticated now. So again, that's a sort of a product of growth, the product of success. So that's always something to bear in mind when we go through these things. We're actually becoming a medium-sized organisation. Maybe we'll grow even more. Maybe we'll stay around this size, but it's hard to imagine a future where we go back to a very small organisation. So on that, any questions? Are they supposed to come up here if there are questions?
Yep. So I'll let you get Conan's back. Can I get you to use the mic so the people online can hear, if that's okay?
Rob, I'm wondering if you anticipate us doing incoming minister briefings once, the government's back in and a new ministry is announced.
Yeah, so there are probably two bits. One is a lot of departments will do an incoming government brief in the caretaker for when they get a new minister. Here you go, minister, here's what the portfolio is about and here's what happens. I don't anticipate us doing one of those. What I will do is talk to health to see what input do they need from us to make theirs work nicely. The health portfolio's got 15, 20, some huge number of portfolio agencies. So they've got to manage, because either way they're going to have a new minister. If the current government's returned, they're going to have a new minister. And obviously if they change of government, they'll have a new minister. And the health portfolio is pretty daunting, particularly now, coming out of the COVID thing. So there'll be a fair bit of work that they'll need to do. So I'll talk with colleagues there to say, okay, what's useful from us? What will be important though is for us to have the set of things that a new minister might need to do very quickly. The standout, at least from where I sit, the stuff I know about, would be looking at the board membership, because we have some board members whose time is up by the end of the year, I think, end of the calendar year. So, to get a new board member takes time, depending on what the relevant minister wants to go through. So that'll be something I'll be saying, well, you've got to have something in there in the first few weeks, you've got to turn your mind to that. And that'll be the opportunity for, if we've got other stuff going on in the organisation, to bring it to awareness. So the first bit will be to get it into that brief, even if it's just a line of, actions in the first 2 months, 3 months, determine future members of the AIHW board, and there might be other things that we need to do. So that'll be, once I talk with colleagues in health, make sure we get that circulated around so people know where we're sitting. And then, of course, the great product that a new minister is going to have is Australia's health, because that's due to be given to the minister. I think our legislation requires us by the end of June. I think the team has an ambition to have it there mid-June. And this will be, actually, it's a great opportunity for a new minister to personally get a product or products that sort of go through the whole health system, and then think about how it might be launched. So that'll be a key one. Is there anything else you had in? Oh, that's good. Okay. No questions? Any other?
I was wondering if there's any update to ASL cap or SES cap anticipated, or?
Well, thanks, Bill. That's just for those, that was Bill. And Bill's asked a question about any update on the ASL cap or the SES cap. No. The opposition, the current opposition, I'm pretty sure in their policy about public service, not that I've looked at that closely because, you know, we're not in caretaker yet, so I'm still public servant, work for the government today, but, you know, on the weekends I might browse other things. And I think they've got a policy there of getting rid of the ASL cap. It's interesting for what that'll mean for a place like us. You know, when Andrew put up that slide about what we're funding from appropriation, what's external fees, the external bit's a lot more, 60 odd million to 30 odd million. And so imagine we didn't have an ASL cap, just go out and recruit people. We then got to be really judicious about, we don't want to recruit permanent staff when we've got temporary money. And that's going to be, I mean, one of the upsides of the sort of we're forced down the path of contractors. One of the upsides of that is that we can manage that that temporary flow of money quite well. Now, there's capacity to have non-ongoing ASL, but non-ongoing staff are treated as an ASL in the ASL cap. Of course, from an individual's perspective, would I prefer to be non-ongoing? Would I prefer to be a contractor? You know, there are sort of costs and benefits of both. So to be, if there's a change, it'd be an interesting one for us to work through. And one of my previous departments, I was involved in a situation where we had over-recruited and above what our budget would entail, and there's a drop-off in the budget, and we went through, I think, 3 rounds of voluntary redundancies and couldn't get the numbers down. So we then had to go through a round of involuntary redundancies. So basically had to spill and fill, and a bunch of people who, you know, they were doing their job, they're doing it well, doing it okay, found they had no job. And that was, in 32 years, that was the worst experience I've ever been through. So for them, for the people, of course, it's even worse. It's hard enough having to tell someone, but imagine a situation where you've done a good job, you've always reasonable feedback, and then you turn up one day and, I mean, after a very thorough process, find out you don't have a job. Pretty terrible. So I want to make sure that whatever the outcome is, we have in place something that's sustainable. If the current government's returned, I haven't seen any potential change in their position. Having said that, you know, the minister who was really keen on this was the former finance minister, Minister Cormann. Be interesting to see what the appetite will be, whether it stays pretty rigorous. So, I mean, having said that, if you look closer to our numbers, where cap is it's a flexible kind of thing. We've got like a sort of a straw boater rather than a hard cap. And then, you know, that's something I've got to be conscious of managing properly, because the portfolio secretary might be saying, well, hang on, if everyone did what you did, then the portfolio is going to be over. And so you need to be more responsible in what you do. I'd say, point taken, Brendan, let's talk again next year, and we'll wait and see how that works through. But as soon as we do get something that's, I know that'd be something you know, interest to people. So as soon as we have something where there's a bit of clarity, I'll make sure, let everyone know. Any other questions here? No? Nothing online? Everyone's happy in the service? Oh no. So, no questions? Okay, well, I won't delay people unnecessarily. So thanks all for tuning in. If people do have questions they didn't feel like they wanted to raise here, either for Andrew, for Matt, or for me, I'm sure everyone will be happy to be contacted out of session and to follow up anything that people are interested in. So on that, have a good day, and it's not long until we get our Easter break, so enjoy that as well. Ta-da. Can I press leave? Oh.